Hello, and welcome to the Other Team's Tunes Tuesday, a weekly series that discusses music and matters with queer artists you love. I'm your host, Maud Mosley. My pronouns are they, them, and joining me this week is Hamilton-based indie rock band Basement Revolver. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me. First of all, I am Chrissy Hearn. My pronouns are she and they. I am the front person or one of the front people in Basement Revolver. I play guitar and sing in the band. I also run a queer clothing line called Real Fruit Juice. That's me.
Fantastic. Well, it's really great having you here today, particularly because, your sophomore album, Embody, was released fairly recently, just this past February. And tracks on the album, cover struggles with body image, mental health, and, faith, amongst other things. But also interspersed among those heavier topics are songs that speak to a deep sense of love and care. Did you seek out that balance or did it come naturally? And how do you feel it impacted the album?
I think that it comes naturally. I think just because a lot of the music that we write is super autobiographical, nothing is fiction really. And I'm very lucky to have an amazing partner. My husband, Wade, is he's the best. So supportive through everything. So I think that's where a lot of the positive side of things on the record come through. But also I think even with mental health things, with depression and anxiety, it doesn't mean when you're struggling with depression or anxiety, it doesn't mean that that's your entire world and everything about you. There's so much more to a person than just that. So I would hope that gets reflected in our music.
Yeah, thank you so much for speaking to that. And do you feel like there's different ways that you write when it comes to, writing about those heavier topics, writing about things you've struggled with versus, writing about things that bring you joy and make you feel cared for?
I think definitely. When I'm writing about those more vulnerable, actually I think both of them are vulnerable, but they're vulnerable for different reasons. Writing love songs or songs about more positive things feels so cheesy, and it's hard to turn off that inner critic when you're because it is cheesy. Love is cheesy and stupid. So obviously songs about that are going to sound cheesy and stupid. And then on the flip side, when I'm writing about things that I'm struggling with, the fear that comes up is about explaining it to my family. That came up a lot with this record, was just not that I've hidden who I am from them. Well, I kind of did for a long time. I only recently came out and talked with them about my depression and anxiety and eating things. But all that being said, there's songs on the record that might be hurtful to them, and I don't want that, but it's also my truth and my experience. So I think more than anything, I'm very comfortable being an open book, But when I'm afraid that it's hurtful to people, that makes me very stressed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I feel like that's something a lot of, I think a lot of musicians think about, but not necessarily a lot of non-musicians think about, where they don't have to think about how people that they have interpersonal relationships with are going to view them now that they've heard certain songs. And, you have kind of the surface level feelings about that. I know people who don't swear in their songs because they still have like the, I don't want my mom to hear me swearing.
Yeah.
But you definitely also have these other instances, that you've brought up where it's, when you're being really vulnerable, who else can feel like they are being a part of that story that, is your story to share. But they also feel like they're there and maybe have different feelings about it.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that just made me think of like past songs that I've written that were like pretty not religious, but had like a religious element to them. And that I like was always afraid at shows that would alienate people because I don't want anyone to feel unsafe ever. So it's just another facet of that, I guess. But yeah.
Definitely. And, as somebody who feels like those are really things that you hold on to and things that you clearly do think about a lot, is there any music that you've been holding on to or that, you haven't released or haven't even like considered moving towards releasing because of, nervousness regarding how other people might see themselves in it or, think about you through it?
There's definitely been hesitation in the past, but again, it's also like, this is my experience, this is my life. And like, I think for me personally, making music is super therapeutic. And like, if I'm not able to be honest in that writing and in that process, then I don't feel like it's I don't know if useful is the right word for me, but I don't feel like it's like productive, I guess, which also is a word I don't like. I don't know if there's a right way to say it without sounding super snobby, but yeah, I'm first and foremost think I make music from my own wellness. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that is something, so many musicians share and is a really like valuable experience. So then, speaking to prior to Embody, because Embody as well as your debut album, Heavy Eyes, received funding from different granting bodies to be made. So how do you feel like access to that funding has impacted the work you're able to produce as a band? Because obviously that's not something, everyone has access to, whether it's because of, the grant system or, living in different areas of the world that have, other systems or don't have systems like that in place at all.
Totally. We're super privileged. Like before we were signed to Sonagunion, we applied for so many grants and like didn't get anything. Then immediately as Sonagunion came along, we got funding. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it is just like a really hard world to navigate. And if you aren't a grant writer, good luck, which sucks. And it shouldn't be like that. Like the system definitely favors people who already have like a bit of like not street cred, but like a bit of a like push or a hand up. And I know for like when we've been on tour and in other countries, people are always like super envious that we're Canadian because of that funding and because it makes making music a lot more realistic and easy and accessible. But then I'm also like, it's not accessible to everyone. And I wish that it was, because yeah, like we wouldn't have recorded probably any of it without having that funding behind us. Like I have always been when you're an artist, like I work minimum wage jobs for most of my career as a musician. I'm like lucky now that I get to be my own boss, but that wasn't always the case. And when you're like just scraping by on minimum wage to pay rent, like there's nothing left over. And I have to acknowledge that like there's a lot of socioeconomic privilege that I experience as a white person, and with the help of that industry behind me, yeah, I'm super thankful that it's like a thing that I've been able to do. I think like without the help of grants, we probably wouldn't be making music, which also just makes me sad because I'm like, who are all those people who aren't making music because it's not feasible? Recording is expensive, touring is expensive. We still aren't really making money as a band, even though we've been doing it for a long time. So yeah, we basically have funding to the point that we're not paying out of pocket ourselves. So, and that in and of itself is like unbelievably great. So yeah. And with a lot of the grants, you have to like prove that you're putting your own money into it too. And if you don't have that, then what do you do? So
Yeah, thank you so much for, speaking to like the privilege of the situation, but all the ways, that the situation's still so inaccessible, and, how it still has a lot of faults that exclude so many people based on so many different situations. And absolutely, yeah, if you can't take the time to write a grant, which can take hours, or if you don't have the money to hire a grant writer, or if you don't have, grants ask for so many different, tangible things that you have to prove. And so much of that can't be proven by people who haven't had the support yet.
I haven't built the network of people yet, or like, which also just, yeah, it's a system like any other system in our government. So it's definitely flawed. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, thank you for adding that. It's true. We can talk about those flaws anytime and for so long. But yeah, lastly, I do want to speak a bit to, your social media presence, as, it is a big area for bands these days. A lot of the attention that, they can get is naturally kind of built on how we can exist online, unfortunately, and to, a lot of artists' dismay, because a lot of us wish we could maybe spend less time, on social media and creating posts, and maybe a little more time making art and doing the things we want to do. But, through those social media pages, you often take time to discuss your experiences with eating disorders in, personal and often, very vulnerable ways. So what does it mean to you to make space for that vulnerability and to share those experiences alongside the band's work?
Yeah, it's a complex thing. I find for me that opening up about my eating disorder or disordered eating, however we want to say it, and opening up about my mental health struggles think having those things out in the light kind of takes away their power. Eating disorders specifically thrive in isolation, and thrive in secrecy. And once I like talked about it openly, I felt so much freedom from it. And it gets a little bit fucky when we think about like not fetishizing, but like commoditized, I don't know how to say that, but turning like vulnerability into a commodity. I think like that happens a lot on social media and in media in general, and I think it's kind of yucky. So it's kind of hard to like navigate what the line is there. But I've also gotten a lot of positive feedback from people who are going through similar experiences and who are benefiting from someone else talking openly about it. I know for myself, it really helps me to say what I'm going, or like say what I've been processing. And I like having the community of the internet to journey with me through that. It has been a positive thing for me, even though I can recognize that it can be a very negative experience for a lot of people. And the fact that like the algorithms on Facebook and Instagram thrive off of like inflammatory things and like push advertisements that are like, I can't even tell you the amount of ads I've had to like turn off and say don't show me this, that are like weight loss ads or diet tea ads or like workout regime things that I used to spend hours obsessing over. And like it's come out in the news that like Facebook does that on purpose to keep you on their or Meta now, to keep you on their metaverse. And that is very predatory and fucked up. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room for nuance, as with a lot of things in life. I think that there's a lot of space for beauty and community to thrive as well. So yeah, I feel like everything is a paradox, really. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing how, that process has been, healing for you in some ways and, healing for you on certain days, and also, extends that care and kind of a form of like representation to, other people who feel like they can't speak to that or can't share their experiences publicly, but, feel like they can be in solidarity with you, through you speaking about it. So it's also really nice that, you've had a really positive community response to it as well. Because, I know certain times people that, shouldn't find posts or, trolls and such, can end up there. So I'm really glad that, the people who either need to see it or do, come across it have that, positive and caring understanding and response to it.
Totally. And I think like the nice thing, like I mostly use Instagram, and I think the nice thing about Instagram is that you can kind of democratize the media that you're consuming. Like you can curate who you're following and curate the voices that you're choosing to listen to. So I think it's important to curate voices that are more important than my voice. Like I there's a lot of like amazing content creators that are like people of color or trans or just have different life experiences than me, that I think their voices need to be heard. And so I choose to like follow those people and not follow things that are not nourishing or good for me. So that's a thing. That's if you choose to be on social media, I think that we have the power to choose what content we are consuming as well.
Yeah. And that's such a great reminder. I know, so many of us have gone through phases of being like, oh, why does this app exhaust me so much? And it's always just like, well, why are you following people that you don't like, or whose content makes you angry, or who there's so many things like that where, we can identify the problem. But sometimes it takes a while to fix it.
Or even with trolls, like there's people who, especially surrounding like pandemic restrictions, would get mad at us on Instagram for like saying wear a mask or whatever. A very normal, considerate thing to do, I think. And I was getting so like frustrated and worked up about these like people with wildly different worldviews and opinions than me, and who were going out of their way to like create drama. And I was like, oh yeah, I can just like choose to not engage in this, and I can delete their comment because I don't think it's important for anyone else to see, and I don't think it's important for me to see. Like, you don't need to give in to shitty people just because they're on the internet. You don't need to argue with them either. You can just choose to not engage because it's not worth your time.
So true. And I feel like that reminder of setting healthy boundaries on social media is a beautiful place to end this interview on, because I know so many of us that, need that reminder, need that affirmation in our lives. So thank you so much for joining me on this week's Tunes Tuesday. If you'd like to check out any of the music that we've talked about, any of the videos, if you'd like to stay tuned with Basement Revolver on social media, like we've been discussing as well, check out any of the links below the video. I will also be linking some eating disorder, disordered eating resources down there. I know these things have, a long wait list, and there's not always someone available to speak, but there are still some resources out there that are accessible. So I will make sure to put those down in the comment section below if this conversation brought up anything for you, or if you were just looking for resources related to that. So thank you again for being here with me, and Basement Revolver will be playing us out.